Did enough to wrench it away. Cotton the dog for Hensel. You're kidding me. His depth and resolve has been tested. Cotton drops. Not sure what to do, so kicks it back up to the top. Shot clock at 5 for Cotton. That's ridiculous. Bryce Cotton at his very, very best.
Well, BC, he was at it again on Friday night. But welcome to the Wildcat Wrap. This is Adam Batt here alongside with me, as he always is Josh Higgins from the Basketball Fix. He's the captain, the coach. He is the general manager. He's everything you want to be if you're a Basketball Fix person. But again, please always like, subscribe, hit up the Basketball Fix on all their socials, Instagram, Facebook, for all your basketball needs, especially coming into the most important time of the season, finals. Josh, welcome back to the show. How are you going, mate? Are you up and about, and maybe, slightly curious as to how the next couple of days are going to unfold?
Yeah, mate, I'm up and about, to say the least. It's been an incredible season, and I think, we've gone through 20 rounds now of NBL action, and we're here. We're here at the pinnacle now, mate. This is where every moment matters, every game matters, every possession matters. This is where we see the teams who are pretending go away and the contenders start to really, really come out. So I'm looking forward to it, mate. And obviously breaking down the last week that has been with the Perth Wildcats, has been a couple incredible matchups and games that obviously we've seen over the past month. And this was another one of them on the weekend. This Adelaide 36ers game was another playoff atmosphere. RAC Arena was absolutely pumping. And obviously now we're heading over to the Perth Elite Performance Centre or something like that. It's no longer Challengers Stadium. So, 4,000 people are going to be packing out that sort of stadium, which is unfortunate. But obviously we'll talk about that more in detail later on in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. The voice is a little bit croaky for me. I think it was maybe I was too busy cheering on Southeast Melbourne yesterday, was begging for them to get a lead of 22 points or whatever it was to allow Perth to finish second, but not to be, and that's okay. Perth had their chances across the season.
I better not say what I wanted to say there, I reckon. I'll keep it PG, but yeah, so we'll just say you've been having a few beers, mate. We'll go with that one as well, eh?
Sure, we'll go with that one too. All right, let's do the rewind. Take a look back at the previous game, of course, all the way back to Friday. And you sort of touched on it, Josh, a massive atmosphere, another 13,000, I'm pretty sure it was. It was raucous in there. It was just sort of a slobber knocker kind of match. It was just two teams at a very high scoring that we've seen across the season. Adelaide are a classically dangerous team. Where they've got 3-4 guys that can easily get 20 plus points. Montrez started on fire too. He was unstoppable. He was giving it to the RAC Arena, and of course many of the Perth Wildcats players as well came back to haunt him in the end, but nonetheless he was a big pivotal play for them early on. Yet again, Perth unfortunately they had to claw themselves back into the game. They had a quarter time deficit of 7 points, but true to form, they used one term across the game to explode, and it was that third term, 32-22, and they just did enough in that final term to etch out 112-104 victory. A quick one for mine, 50% or 14 of 28 from three-point land. That was just sensational shooting. That is the classic Perth game. They love to shoot the three-pointer, but also +8 in rebounds. So it was a strong showing of what is normally not a strength of theirs, and they were going up against Humphreys and Harrell, which is no mean feat. So obviously, they had to get the win first and foremost. Eventually, they got it done. Maybe it's slightly disappointing that they could have won by a little bit more convincing. But hey, they're sitting in third, and we'll see what happens after that. Josh, how did you sort of see it all break down there?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting game, mate. And there was a couple of things, and I sort of want to touch where you started on with obviously Montrez Harrell and that sort of situation. And as we did last week, got a couple of films to break down here, but early on, it was the KD matchup with Montrez that sort of gave them a little bit of trouble, and he was dominant inside, and it sort of scares me to a certain degree when it comes down to the NBL playoffs and what we're going to see coming up. We've obviously got some incredible players, which we will see. Matt Hurt, for example, who we will see this weekend with Jordan Hunter as well. We could possibly see and Xavier Cooks as well in the next couple of weeks. And there is some absolute star-studded big men in the league. And he just found his shots very early on. And I know obviously we got him into foul trouble late in the game, and he was very, very explosive, and he obviously eventually fouled out. But he's an absolute firecracker. And for the Sydney Kings to be coming up against him next week, I would be absolutely scared. We don't know what the issues are or what's going on with Xavier Cooks as well, which is the other thing. But he is an absolute dominant force. And I just wanted to mention before we got into it a little bit further as well. But touching on this particular game, there's a few things that I'd like to mention. And I guess the first one I'd like to mention is the fact of, I think when we're at our best, it's when we're playing really, really fast transition basketball. Now, transition basketball seems to be the way of the Wildcats at the moment as well. And it's interesting because we do it in so many different ways. We see a couple of plays here as well. KD early in the game, a quick little rebound, straight to Bryce and pushing the transition. Now, are we playing super fast once we get into in the front court? Not really. Slows it down. Keanu, little baseline drive here for the little and one layup here as well. Now, it's going to be interesting to see where this team goes, because I think you're going to have to play fast when it comes playoff time. Defense is important, but pushing the pace and the tempo is also at a really, really important sort of situation, and sort of really important to the team as well. Now, when we obviously looked at this game in particular, we had some absolute star performances. No bigger than Bryce's 49 points and 7 assists. We also had Keanu Pinder with the 18 points, Dylan Windler with the 15 points, and Christian Doolittle with the 14 points as well. And it's the spread that I'm starting to see that I'm really liking. And then you look at the bench. The bench didn't have a massive impact. There wasn't a lot of production off the bench. There wasn't many minutes off the bench either. But Ty Webster still had 9 points coming off the bench as well. And they really shortened that rotation to a 9-man rotation, which I spoke to John really about after the game. And he sort of spoke about, it's a next man up mentality. Pretty much when they see someone that they like to bring on who's playing well, who's performing well, they'll bring him on and give him a go. We saw Elijah Pepper come on for a few minutes in that particular game, and he just looked a bit disjointed. Gave away a quick little turnover to Keanu Rasmussen, and just looked a little bit out of shape and a little bit out of the action, I guess, as well. And this one I love here. Forcing Kendrick Davis with a little transition. Benny Henschel driving, drawing the foul, and one. Huge. Like, there was just really, really key moments in this game that the Wildcats constantly found. And I've got a few other stats here, mate, and I want to highlight Christian Doolittle. And it was interesting when they said it on the commentary as well, because it's just so true about this guy. He's developed his game from just a rebounding defender to an all-around good player. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists in a near triple-double effort. Like, that is just absolutely massive from one of the star players in the NBL. He's no longer just a star of the Wildcats. He's a star of the entire league. And he just does everything so well. He got himself into foul trouble, and he was, as he is, disappointed in himself. He then turned that mentality around to have one of the best games for the Perth Wildcats, and was just absolutely huge. So I'm just really excited about this team coming into the playoffs, and I guess the prospects of what this team can do over the next couple of months, and really see this team propel to a potential NBL champion as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
Yeah, me too. And like one of those clips there with Ben Henschel when he was out on the run, and he could have gone for the 3, but like I think it's the development of Ben. He sort of did the fake, then went for the lap, get the N1, attack the paint. It's so easy just to go, I know that he's a pretty good shooter, and he's improved that 3-point percentage from last year to this year. But I love the fact that he said, I'm not going to settle for the 3. I'm going to attack the paint. I'm going to get someone in foul trouble, and I'm going to make it count. And like, the real KD, Christian Doolittle, like he's just brilliant. And the fact that 2 early fouls, so like I think like 3 or 4 minutes into the game, if that, but just to pull your headspace in and say, my team needs me. I need to change the way I play. I'm just going to play up and down the whole time. But the effect that he still had, still scoring, still getting those rebounds and the assists, like for a guy that's big and like is that strong, to still dish out that many dimes, like I think he's still underrated within the league, even though it's his second season. Just such an asset that the Perth Wildcats have.
Yeah, no, he's definitely an asset, mate, as well. And I guess that the biggest asset that we do have is the main man, Bryce Cotton. Like, you just can't go past him. Once again, we'll get a few highlights up. He started the game as more of a facilitator, and then he really started to find his feet. And that was impressive because he looked a little bit annoyed to start the game. You saw him there complaining about not getting the call, and then he just started having his fun. Look at this, pull up 3-pointer right in front of Montrezl Harrell. You give him the slightest bit of space, he will take advantage of that. And I think this is the blueprint for the whole league. You've got to go over the screens, but you've got to do it hard, because you'll see late in the game when they really started to pile on points was when Bryce was playing the pick and roll with either Christian Doolittle, Keanu Pinder. Look at this one as well, to Ty Webster. That is just class basketball. But they were playing the pick and roll, and it was late in the game. And for whatever reason, Montrezl Harrell or Isaac Humphries, whoever the big was, if you watch this here, they're standing back. here we go. Look at Montrez. He's at the free throw line. You've got to come up. You've got to make Bryce pass the ball and let your guys down low cut off what he's doing, because it's just not going to work if you allow him to take his shots. And one thing we are seeing here as well is it's good defense into a good transitional offense. And, great offense is just, Bryce, look at this again. It's just way too low. I just don't understand what they're doing here. Like, it's absurd, some of these shots. And Mike Wells' comments after the game about this guy having that Michael Jordan aura around him. He's a superstar. He's a legend of the league. I just honestly thought it was a really, really good sentiment. It's one of the greatest players of all time in the NBL. And we've got to put more respect on this man's name. I think the older generation of the NBL are continuing to disrespect him because he's getting closer to Andrew Gaze when it comes down to the greatest player of all time. And we see this all the time in the NBA, right? If I played in the NBA, for example, right now, and sort of said, like I played against Michael. Charles does it all the time. If you played against somebody who is the greatest player of all time and you weren't able to beat them, but you won an MVP over them, you'd be thinking that you're also one of the greatest players of all time. When a LeBron James come in, all these old boys are disrespecting Michael Jordan because it's another guy who's bringing some greatness, maybe potentially above where they are sitting right now. So I just think we've really got to enjoy it. We've really got to just hone in on the basketball and not worry about the contract and what he's going to do next year. That's not important right now. The important thing right now for Bryce, the Perth Wildcats, and all the Wildcats fans is the fact that we really, really focus in right now and we bring this championship back to Perth, which we've been starved of for a few seasons now as well. So, MVP, I think he'll definitely win that coming up as well. And he's had an incredible season, mate. But I just want to show a few more highlights there because they were absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he was absolutely on song. And I think that when he saw what Kendrick Davis was doing for Adelaide in that first half, I think it's that little thing that Bryce needs just to say, I need to just step up that little bit more. And he took his game to a whole new level, ended up smashing out 49. I think he had like a run of about 8 or 10 points on the trot in that third term. So it kind of sometimes gets frustrating because he's like, Bryce is so good and like you don't want to keep relying on him, but then he just keeps doing it. Like, we just have to be thankful that this guy chose us. He's still here and he's still just producing a remarkable basketball week in, week out. And it's weird that, like, I think 6 or 7 seasons in, he's almost had, I think it's probably defined his best season in the NBL. And again, we could probably talk about Bryce the whole podcast, but we do have to move forward. And we're going to get to a little bit more breakdown of the finals ahead. But let's sort of take a little bit of a lighter look at Who Am I? The Guess Who. It's back by popular demand. So 4 clues, 3 guesses. Maybe I'm giving too many clues out, Josh. I don't know. But and of course, fans, please, as you're listening to this, whether it's in the car or whether it's on your MacBook, Spotify or YouTube, have a couple of guesses yourself. So firstly, I had a short career with the Perth Wildcats in the late 2000s to the early 2010s. Josh gave me some feedback that my previous guess was a little bit before his time, so I tried to bring us into the current time. After that, I moved to a couple of other NBL teams on the Eastern Seaboard. I can see everyone's brains ticking over here. So, a couple of people are eliminated. A couple of people are back in the frame. The third clue, during my career, I had the accolades, among others, of being an NBL MVP, a best defensive player, and a 3-time All-NBL first team. And the last clue, maybe the one that's going to piece it all together for our massive Wildcat fans who love listening to the Wildcat rap. After my playing career finished, I became an assistant coach in the NBL, being part of a championship team before returning to the United States for family reasons a couple of years ago. So, Josh, you've got 3 guesses. I feel like you're quietly confident on this one. You may only need one, so fire away, mate.
Oh, mate, I think this is a bit easier. This is when I started following the Wildcats all those years ago, and this guy played from the Wildcats in 2009 was his first season. So we only scraped into the early 2000s, and that was, I guess, the harder part, I guess. But this guy had an incredible career. An NBL MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-NBL. He went and coached at the Sydney Kings as an assistant coach in their championship run as well. They had over there a couple of years ago. I think it was when Andrew Bogut was playing for them, possibly off the top of my head. But it's an easy one, mate. The left-handed scorer, lovely jump shot. He was an absolute star for the Perth Wildcats. I'd love to just pop it right there, mate. Kevin Lish, am I 100% correct, mate, or am I wrong?
Yeah, Gold star for you, Josh. Gold star. So no, that was a very, very good guess. And yeah, Kevin Lish has, a storied history with Perth, even though it was such a short period of time, only about 3 or 4 seasons, but he made a heck of an impact. And yeah, just a really good person as well, and spoke really well, quite humble. And yeah, he worked hand in hand with that championship that they won. I think it was 2010 possibly, but so yeah, well done, Josh. Good job. Off to a very good start. So we'll see what happens. We have to rank up the difficulty meter for our next who am I over the next fortnight. But let's talk all things finals now. So what's going to hold this team back from a championship, and what will help them win a championship? So firstly, Josh, you're going to kick us off with, what do you think as the Perth Wildcats approach the finals? The first game is on Tuesday against Southeast Melbourne at the Perth High Performance Centre, formerly, of course, Challenge Stadium, also called HBF Stadium as well. So Josh, what's going to hold them back from going all the way to the big dance?
Yes, well, there's been absolutely glaring issues, I guess, when we touch on what the Wildcats have been doing well, what they haven't been doing well, and they sort of contrast on both ends of the basketball court. So you've got the defensive end of the basketball court, which we'll touch on right now in terms of what could potentially hold this team back. Now, I think realistically, there's a number of things that go on, and we can go in statistically, which we will right now. So they're allowing 96.9 points per game, which is the second worst points per game average in the competition for their opponents. That is going to hold this team back tremendously when it comes into the playoffs, because we know when it comes down to it all, defense wins championships. You can have a really, really good offensive team. It only gets you so far. Now, I still am of a belief that you can still win a championship nowadays with an outstanding offense, but it's got to be historical offense, which the Wildcats don't really have. Bryce Cotton is historical, but the Wildcats as an overall team aren't having that historical season. So it's going to be really interesting to see what it is. But when I've spoken to John Ridley, when I've spoken to players, when you speak to people within the organization, and it's on public record, the main thing that they want to worry about and fix is mindset. Some of these guys will rock up and they're all defensive players and they're playing like a team and they're all switched on. And then the next game they come out and they just have an absolute stinker. And we've seen that in games against the Cairns Taipans. I think Melbourne United, they were really, really good defensively. And since then, they've had patches where they've been good defensively, and it's really allowed the offense to flurry. So, we saw the game against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix a couple of weeks ago where obviously this team was just on fire. And then Wildcats stopped them, had their huge run in the last quarter and won that game by 1 point. The Sydney Kings on the weekend last week, the team was focused. They were super, super focused. Everywhere they went or anything they did, they played with intent. And that's what they've got to do going forward. They've got to play with intent and a little bit of heart. So, I think that's one of the biggest things is obviously the struggles defensively, which will, not allow them to sort of go for these deep playoff runs if they don't switch on. And the other thing as well that I want to mention is the three-point shot. They're allowing their opponents to shoot the three ball at 36.4%. Now, people may think that's quite low. That's the third best average for, if you're looking at team perspectives for the opposition, that's the third best average in the league. But you're looking from a Wildcats perspective, that is the third worst allowance of 3-point percentage in the NBL. So it's a horrible statistic when you are allowing it, because I think it comes down to a few things, mate. And we know 3-point shots are, it's sets, it's plays, but it's also transition as well. And when you see these fast-paced teams in the NBL, they drive, they penetrate, they draw you guys off the wing, and they have open shooters in the corner. And that shows that the Wildcats just aren't, once again, switched on when it comes defensively as well. So, I don't know, there's just a lot of things that the Wildcats need to improve on, but it's all down one end. Offensively, which we'll touch on in just a second, is absolutely humming right now. So, I think it just comes down to a few things, a bit of a lack of care, a bit of a lack of detail, and a bit of a lack of attention when it comes down to defensive end. So, realistically, the defensive end is when we see a team playing like a team. They're all joined at the hip. They're all working. There's communication. You can physically hear them when they're at a game. Like I was at the Illawarra Hawks game about a month and a half ago. You could actually hear the Illawarra Hawks yelling out, switch, yep, mine. Just hear in the communication. Now, I know when the Wildcats got the ball, the crowd's a little bit louder and everything like that, but you can't hear them most of the time. They're just, it's silence. So there's a few things that obviously the Wildcats have got to improve on. I still think they can win a championship. These are the things that they've got to work on, though. And these are the things that are probably holding the rest of the NBL back from saying that they're a championship favourite or championship series contender out of the top 6 teams.
It's really interesting because, yeah, like the defensemen's championships, as you said, and it's sort of like for any kind of sport, whether it's basketball, football, anything, like defense has to be solid, or at least you got to be in like the top 3 or top 2. So, and we know that Perth has never been that kind of team, but it still comes down to the mindset. So, like, can you just lock in for one game or a game of, or a series of 3 or a series of 5? Are you able to do that? I think for mine, it's also, do they have a stopper? I know that Ty Webster has come back recently, and maybe he is their person. But, looking ahead at least to possibly the next couple of games, you've got Kendrick Davis, possibly DJ, Nathan Sobey, I guess, first and foremost on Tuesday. And if they can get past that Southeast Melbourne game, then, you've got Trey Kell, you've got Harvey, then you've got Chris Goulding, of course, too. That are all those possibilities if they can get, I guess, to the final 5 and the final lot of 5 games and the final lot of 3 games. So can Ty do that, or can Christian Doolittle do that? Do they have that one player that can lock down someone from the other team when they're on, or even before they get on, because that they're known commodities coming into the game. So I think that's my big concern, that they just haven't had a stopper. And, ever since, the great Damian Martin has stepped away, they've just never really had that one player, that Shea Illy kind of player who you can go to and say, just shut him out. Just give us 5 minutes. Don't let him touch the ball. And we know that Bryce has been shut down so many times by not just Shea, but also other, sort of defensively minded teams and stoppers. So intriguing to see how they go about that across not only the game on Tuesday, and hopefully that's the only one. And then when they get into, fingers crossed, their semi-final series against United. And so that's obviously all the bad stuff, the things that they need to sort of get better at, work on as a team, like the things that they can actually improve on a day-to-day basis, definitely on the training court. But what are their strengths? And we know they've got lots of them, most of it's on the offensive end, as you sort of alluded to quite a bit, and like that we touch on most episodes, to be honest. So what's the key for Perth, Josh? What are they going to do really well that's going to trouble a lot of teams?
Yeah, well, there's a few things, obviously. When we talk about the contrast of everything, we spoke about the two ends of the court and how there's a slight difference between them. So the defensive end, like we just spoke about, has been quite poor, but the offensive end is doing quite well. So when we look at their average, they're averaging 100.1 points per game, which is just absurd in the NBL. That is amazing. So that's the second best percentage and points per game percentage in the NBL, only behind the Illawarra Hawks, who are having probably one of the greatest historical NBL seasons when it does come to the scoring ends. Now, when we dive a little bit deeper, this is where we start to see this team, I guess, fighting in the middle of the pack. So they're top 5 for field goal percentage with 46.3% per game, and also a second best in the NBL for 3-point percentage with 37.1. Now, both of those are accustomed to the way Bryce plays. So the way I see it is, when we're shooting the 3 ball, it's normally Bryce, Benny Henschel, or Dylan Windler as the main 3 shooters on the team. So we've seen Bryce obviously had a historical season where he's making more shots than he probably is missing, to a certain degree as well. And Benny Henschel's having an up and down season. The team's really playing well. This is where I see the transitional basketball coming out a little bit. So the 37.1% from the 3-point line is most of the time in the transition. We saw some highlights earlier on today where obviously when we push the pace, we are really keeping the defenders guessing on the opposition team. Montrezl Harrell, every day of the week, should be stepping up to Bryce, but because we've got good rotating bigs in Keanu Pinda, Itan Almansa, Christian Doolittle, even Dylan Windler as well, in the back of their head, they're like, I can't let that go. I can't let a Keanu Pinda just roll to the basket, because Bryce will throw the ball over the top, and they've got to have rotations down below, which they just weren't. So this is where I sort of see the problem for the Perth Wildcats, though, because a good defensive team like the Illawarra Hawks, who has really good communication and clear communication, they will just quickly run and just block out Bryce and then cover the big man. And then you might have a shooter in the corner, but you can't pass the ball to him because he's too far away. This is where the Wildcats will have problems and have had problems over the last couple of NBL seasons. But the percentages are at a pretty good rate. Now, the other statistic which we spoke about on Beyond the Buzzer a few weeks ago, if you haven't seen that episode, go check it out, is the bench points and how important that is for a team's success and obviously championship aspirations. Now, as the Wildcats start to find that sort of, 4 or 5 man rotation, I think it'll go down to 3 or 4 man rotation when it comes into the playoffs, we're still seeing a really good impact in points per game. So the bench is averaging 32 points per game, which is 4th in the NBL. Now, the Illawarra Hawks and Sydney Kings are ahead of them with 36, and then the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers are third with 33.5 points per game. Now, obviously, they're out. So the two contenders with bench points, you've obviously got the Kings and the Illawarra Hawks. I think the Hawks are obviously using that bench to a lot more, they're using it more like a bench, where the Kings are playing guys like Cam Oliver off the bench and Jalen Adams and Xavier Cooks, and a bit of a basket case to be completely honest with you. But the Wildcats, 32 points per game off the bench, has been really, really crucial for this team. They only had 13 points off the bench last game. So that is where we are seeing this decline a little bit, and where the bench needs to step up a little bit. I mentioned it earlier. Elijah Pepper looked a little bit lost on the weekend. I think the game was really, really fast, and he's still finding his feet. Jesse Wagstaff really only comes on for docile minutes nowadays. He can't really produce what he was obviously 5 or 6 years ago. He's a little bit too slow. Ty Webster had the 9 points, who was the leader off the bench, and had a really, really solid game. But we're just not getting that overall production. We haven't got that one guy who you're like, he could explode for 20 off the bench like these other teams do. HJ Lee, for example. I keep going back to the Hawks because they're the benchmark. That is who we have to be comparing every single one of these teams to. Can you knock off a Tyler Harvey? I don't think we can. I don't think we can limit a Tyler Harvey and a Trey Kell. Can you knock off a Sam Froling inside? I'm not sure we can. There may be games where we can. Can we hold their bench to under 35 points? Again, I just don't know. HJ Lee can go off for 20. Will Hickey can go off for 20. Lachlan Aldrich can go for 20. Ty can. Pepper, maybe. We haven't seen it for quite a while. Yeah. But besides that, I struggle to find someone who we can consistently look at and go, they might give us 20 this evening. So this is where I start to see, whilst they are doing it well, there are some flaws to the game as well. The last thing I'll mention to you, Batty, as well, I'm going on a bit of a run here, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but it's the rebounding department as well. So they are really stopping their opposition teams from rebounding the ball quite well. And I wanted to highlight this because it's been such a talk for the last couple of seasons about, why are the Wildcats not rebounding well? We're giving up too many rebounds. Well, they've 100% turned that on its head at the last couple of seasons. Yeah. They're third best in the league for opposing rebounds. So the oppositions are averaging 39.9 rebounds per game, and the Wildcats are averaging 41.2 rebounds per game. So quite a nice contrast there, where we're winning the rebound count more. And, you see games, obviously, where we lose a few, and then we see games where there's quite a dominant force our way. But I just love what they're doing. I think they've definitely got some chances to make some deep runs. You just got to keep feeding the hot hand if you're the Perth Wildcats. Bryce Cotton is in historical form. I just think it's got to continue to go through him. We're seeing this team find their feet. And if it comes down to it at the end of the season, mate, and we're playing against a team like the Illawarra Hawks, I still think we're a massive chance to obviously have a crack there. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the boys do as the season comes to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can hear it from me, Josh. Like, obviously basketball fix, media guy, but first and foremost in your heart, Perth Wildcats, mad, sort of so passionate. And like, I know that our fans at the Wildcat Wrap absolutely love that about you. And, the rebounding has been a bugbear for the last couple of seasons in particular, but they've absolutely made a decision most of the time across this year that they're putting that as a priority. And I think John really made that one of his number one things that he wanted to improve from a coaching perspective in the offseason. And it's shown on more of a consistent basis. Of course, having Dylan Windler certainly helps. So in regards to picking up the kind of player and personnel that you need, that's a big tick there. Christian Doolittle as well, and Keanu Pinder. Maybe across the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's changed his mindset big time as well. Just a quick one from me. I think, and I'm sort of turning it into a positive. I think that if Perth, and you sort of touched on this a little bit in the things that they need to get better at, if Perth can lock in defensively, they can absolutely win this championship. And we know that Illawarra are the benchmark. Absolutely. They've had a remarkable run. The first time in their history that they are the minor premiers or, the champions for the regular season. But it's kind of how bad do they want to win this championship? If they really want to bring it home, defensive end, that's where it starts. Get the stops, get the steals, get the hands in, get the deflections, continue on that rebounding sort of, I guess, a key and focus that they've been working on across this season. And KD, Christian Doolittle, nothing but positives and love for him. But I sometimes saw him in the Adelaide game, he was hesitant to shoot. And that's fine. You got your 9 assists. That's brilliant. And I love that he's got such a well-rounded game and why he's such an elite player in not only, as you said, for Perth, but in the NBL right now. He's got a massive reputation, or it's building across this season. He's got to be more aggressive, especially that mid-range game. He's so strong. take those guys down low, especially those guys that you know you've got that size and height advantage over, and make them pay. And so, yeah, I think that Christian Doolittle just needs to be a little bit more aggressive from a shooting perspective. And if Perth can lock in defensively, they can definitely push a number of teams, including their big foes, Melbourne United. Of course, we don't look too far ahead, but if they can get past Southeast Melbourne, they can definitely take care of United. Thankfully, no injuries from the Friday game, so clean bill of health, which is fantastic. But I'm sure the big reason why a lot of Perth Wildcats fans wanted to listen to the Wildcat Rap to talk about the game ahead. The game on Tuesday night at the Perth High Performance Centre, 4,500 pack, which we'll finish off on. So we'll just quickly touch on that as our last point. But Josh, let's do the preview. The Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, a great game that we had a couple of weeks ago against the Phoenix. That they got the job done, just a very, very strong last quarter after what seemed like they were out of the contest. How do you think this is possibly going to play out, and where can Perth get on top of the Phoenix?
Yeah, well, obviously these teams only met a fortnight ago, and it was an incredible game, a real playoff atmosphere where the Wildcats walked away 100-99 winners at RAC Arena. Now, obviously, they're not going to be playing at RAC Arena over the next couple of weeks, as we know, or next game, I should say. But it was a real good all-around production from the Wildcats. So we spoke about, obviously, the fact that there was 9 players played on the weekend. There was 10 players in this particular game. So we had Bryce leading the way with 29 points, 6 assists, and the 1 steal. Keanu Pinder with 22.7 rebounds and the assist as well. And Christian Doolittle finished the game with 17 points and 13 rebounds with the 6 assists. Now, you spoke about Do there as well in terms of being a little bit more aggressive. And I agree to a certain degree, but I don't at the same time, because I think he does it so well where he knows when he can pick his moments. And we see him dominate Melbourne United all the time because their bigs aren't at the level where some of these other teams are. You know, I look at the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix and I go, Matt Hurt's a pretty good player and Jordan Hunter's a very solid defender. And then you've got Malik Lewis who's floating around there as well. So those 3 guys are good rotating bigs. And Do picks his moments. We see it all the time. You know, he'll back himself down. He'll do a little mid-range floater, or he'll do a little turnaround pull-up shot, whatever he wants to do. And he knows his shots, but he knows his capabilities. And that's the thing that I love about him the most, is he's not one of those stars who's like, nah, I'm the star player. I'm paid the most money here. I'm the guy. So I'm going to take 15 shots per game. There's games he'll take 6 or 7 shots. There's games he'll take 20 shots. And that's where there's a nice little dynamic there for the whole team. Just as a little bit of a pushback on your point, as much as I agree with some of it as well. But Dylan's first game back for the Wildcats after that nasty eye injury was this game against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So he finished with the 2 points and the 5 rebounds in this game with about 25 minutes of play. So you've seen him develop into this star player once again over these last 2 games against the Sydney Kings and obviously Adelaide 36ers. And that's what we're getting now out of Dylan consistently, which is going to be the most important thing coming into the playoffs. So I still think they should have won this game by more. There was that last quarter where it was 34-22, I think it was, scoring-wise, in the last quarter for the Perth Wildcats that got them over the line. But it's when we look down the other end of the basketball court that I get a bit worried. And I want to bring some Adelaide film up once again as well, because there's a few things defensively that I get slightly worried about with just how these teams are structured, because Adelaide is structured very similar to, obviously, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, with the star big men and the solid guards. Now, look at this inside defense. It's just not tight enough, and they just don't step up enough. They've just got to close the space. And once again here, Kendrick Davis, way too much space. All right, way too much space. I know he misses a shot. Once again, they get the offensive rebound, saying that we're being pretty poor out. And then we get it again. Keanu Pinder is allowing Montrezl Harrell to take the space that he wants. Montrez knew the shot that he wanted to get to, and Keanu allowed him to do that. Once again here, we got KD and Montrezl Harrell. Little 2-man game, which they absolutely love doing. Another screen again. Jesse, just way too low on the mid-range shot once again. And it's the same things on and on all the time, right? We're giving too much space. We're doing what other things, and this is what we need to do, all right? Itana Mansa, like I said earlier, close the space, close the gap, and absolutely hunt. So, I don't know, I'm a little bit worried, to be honest with you, mate, just in terms of the defensive end of the basketball court, because I just think Sobey's an absolute superstar. You've got Matt Hurd, obviously, who's been, an incredible player for this team all season. Jordan Hunter's been doing his thing, and Matt Hurt and Jordan Hunter in the last game, Hurt had 19 points and 7 rebounds, and Geordie finished the game with 13 points and 13 rebounds and was really dominant. So I don't know, mate. Like, where do you? I got a question for you here, mate, and I guess it's a little bit off the top of my head, and you're gonna have to do it off the top of your head as well. But who's the most important player for this game? Because I don't think it's Bryce, because we know what Bryce is going to do. Like, and it could be anyone. Like, I'll give you who I think is the most important, and it's Jordan Hunter. I think Geordie Hunter is the most important player for this particular game because he allows Matt Hurt to do what he does on the offensive end because he takes the best defensive, the best offensive big on the other team. So we know what's going to happen. Jordan Hunter's going to go and match up on Kevin Durant, on KD and Christian Doolittle. I think that's the matchup they'll go with. And then I think, obviously, I'm not sure that Keanu Pinder is mentally there as what a KD is. So I think at the end of the day that a Matt Hurt will take a Keanu Pinder who's a slightly easier matchup. But Geordie's just been incredible, mate. But I'll stop rambling on here. Who do you think is the most important player for both of these two teams in this particular game?
I agree in regards to, I think Jordan Hunter is going to have a massive say because the Perth Wildcats, if there's one part of their defense in particular that they're not really great at, it's the pick and roll. And Jordan Hunter is the supremo for that in the NBL. So, he can tear Perth apart. But, and you sort of touched on him that he could get, I guess, take it to the cleans a little bit. I think it is Keanu Pinder. I think Keanu Pinder and his last 3 games, he's had this, I guess he's building that form. He's had a couple of double-doubles. He's being aggressive. I know that the couple of defenses in regards to Sydney and Adelaide to an extent, maybe not as strong in that middle part. And you sort of rightly spoken about Matt Hurt and of course Jordan Hunter. But I think that if Keanu can get touches early, get that confidence up early, he can really be a go-to. And Bryce is going to need him to do that because we know what Bryce is going to do most of the time. Same with Christian Doolittle. And of course, Dylan Windler, as you sort of touched on, he's getting back to that sort of consistent kind of a basis where we're going to get probably at least 3 or 4 threes from him. He's going to get 6 to 8 rebounds. But Keanu is always the unsure. But I reckon he's feeling good about himself. And if they feed him early, if he gets even Jordan Hunter into some early foul trouble or Matt Hurt into some early foul trouble. So it works both ways. Keanu gets to get that confidence up, gets touches, gets some early points. And of course, you put some pressure on the opposition where you get 2 of their most important players, Jordan Hunter, Matt Hurt, in some early foul trouble, get them off the court, and then you really go to town in the paint. So I think KP, he is the key, not just to this game, but if they want to go all the way, Keanu Pinder has to have a breakout finals campaign.
Yeah, I love that, mate. I think that's a really good point and really good points that you raised there as well. And I still think from a Perth Wildcats perspective, the most important player is Ty Webster now over these last couple of weeks because we've seen him take the defensive assignment of these star guards. I don't think he did a great job against Kendrick Davis. He still had an all-time great game, and Ty didn't have a great game himself. I think he still looked a bit all over the place as he's trying to find his form again in the NBL. But I still think he's the most important player for the Perth Wildcats right now because Benny Henschel's not a great defender, and he's having to match up right now on a Kendrick Davis, for example. Let's just put this matchup into perspective, right? Like Nathan Sobey, we'll talk about this game in particular. He is a bit of a nightmare in terms of the matchups because he can get past you very easy. He can shoot the 3 ball, and he can drive very, very well and finish nicely in the paint. So who do you match up on him? You don't want to match up Bryce because he plays 40 minutes per game. You don't want him on the best offensive player, best opposing guard. So Bryce isn't the option. Benny Henschel, I think we'll spend time on him, but he's not the best defensive option. Christian Doolittle, his time best served is defending Matt Hurt and not Nathan Sobey. So we can't really waste him on Nathan Sobey. So that's not the best matchup there. Dylan Windler as well is probably going to be spending some time on Malik Lewis or potentially on Matt Hurt as well as a bit of an undersized matchup with the rotations with Christian Doolittle. But he could maybe is the matchup that you go for Nathan Sobey. And that's the one that I'd be looking at and targeting is the Dylan Windler on Nathan Sobey matchup. And then when Ty comes off the bench, you give Dylan a little bit of a relaxation and put him on, Malik Lewis. And then Ty takes over from Nathan Sobey. So that's the way I sort of see it playing out. And it's going to be such an impressive game. But the thing I want to look is the next step after that. I know we're running out of time. We've got a couple more minutes here. But the next step, we lose this game, for example. Let's just put the worst case scenario, right? We lose this game. We play one of Adelaide or Sydney. I still like our chances against both of those teams. I still think that we will dominate those 2 teams. And then we'll be playing the Illawarra Hawks in that first round of the playoffs. Now, all things considered, I'd love to know what your decision is, and people are probably going to kill me in the comment section when I say this. I'd rather lose this week and not go up against Melbourne United because I don't think we match up well with Melbourne United. We never have. over these last couple of seasons. They've got a formula to shut down Bryce Cotton, which it's just unstoppable. Like, obviously Illawarra's taken parts of it, but they're the forefront, and they're the team that really does a good job on Bryce. I think their bigs are an awkward sides and an awkward matchup because they're good defensively. You got Marcus Lee, who's just an absolute defensive stopper and stops anything coming inside, and then you got Rob Lowe, who can do the defensive end, play dirty, and obviously score as well at a pretty high rate. And then you've got CG 43, who's their Bryce Cotton. So I don't think it'd be the worst for us to lose this game, have another home game, and we're still playing good basketball. Because the other thing as well we got to think about, we're getting nearly a 3-week break or a 2.5-week break if we do win this particular game before we play the Illawarra Hawks. Now, you see all the time in the AFL with that formula, with the bye round before the finals start, the team who wins the qualifying finals goes straight through the prelim. There's about a month off in between the first game and the second game. And it's really bad for teams. They come out slow, they come out sloppy, they come out disjointed, they come out everything because they haven't had that contact. They haven't had that game-like feeling. You can try it all as much as you want in training, but you never can replicate that on the training court. So, I don't know. For the Wildcats, obviously, it's never nice losing a game and saying that I hope we lose. And I don't hope we lose. I'd love for us to go straight through the playoffs, and because we're there, we have a chance of winning a championship. But I like the Illawarra Hawks matchup over the Melbourne United matchup a little bit more, mate.
Look, I think, logically you make so many points that are like on soccer. We've absolutely struggled against Melbourne United, and, you put it into great detail as well. And you can't really argue with that. But I think for mine that, you want to get through to Illawarra for the grand final series. And I think if Perth, if they win that first game, of course, on Tuesday night, then they'll be playing United. I think if they can get over them, whether it's in 2 games or 3 games, that's going to give them so much confidence. So get over United, who they haven't been able to beat. They've been their bogey team, absolutely. So then you do everything that we've sort of spoken about across the podcast. You lock in defensively. You work on your pick and roll defense. You find a way to get Bryce free away from Shea Ili and Matthew Dellavedova. So there's all these reasons that they can beat them and they can do it. And then if they go, all right, we can take care of United, who have had our number pretty much for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So then we can take care of Illawarra. I reckon going through them first, there's going to be a nice confidence booster. And then, of course, the ultimate challenge in, just what has been an incredible season just on record from the Illawarra Hawks. So I'd probably rather go through United first, just to prove themselves that they can do it. Because if they can't get through United, then they don't deserve to be there. Obviously, they won't anyway because they would have lost, but they don't deserve to do it if they can't take care of United. So, yes, it's going to be really interesting. And fans, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Should they not lose, but if they lose against South East Melbourne, is it going to be the worst thing, or do you want to play United? So, of course, hit us up with all those comments and thoughts. So, just before we quickly sign off, I know we're running out of time, Josh, just a quick little comment on and of course, there was a lot of locomotion around across the start of the week. And, it was in my head, and my head was spinning around trying to fit in as many Kylie puns as I could in that last sentence. But due to Kylie Minogue, as we know, the game on Tuesday is going to be at the High Performance Centre. Do you think there are any pros to a 4,500 capacity arena compared to, 13,000? There must be some kind of advantage there, maybe. I don't know.
Nah, no advantage at all, mate. No, I still think the biggest disadvantage is, 7,500 fans, and then obviously non-members and all that sort of stuff. Well, members and then non-members will not be able to attend the game. So I'm still seething. I still think Mark's got to pull the finger out here and build his own stadium, because I would be boycotting RAC Arena, and that's the hardest thing is there's just nowhere else to go right now. Unless someone's going to fork out the cash and state government's going to help out Mark Arena building an arena, then we're stuck at the same old thing. It's disappointing to say the least. I don't know how you can do it from a standpoint of when we're the number 1 people in the arena. Like, Kylie Minogue's a has-been. Let's just put that out there right now. Like, who listens to her stuff nowadays? Has she even released any music since 1990? Like, realistically, what has she done in that span? All right, the Perth Wildcats have had their best season in some time and are looking really, really good, and we're enjoying it, and the fans are buzzing. They're selling out arenas, and all of a sudden, we're playing at fucking Challenger Stadium, right? Who wants to go down there for 4,500 people? So, I don't know, like, there better be some sort of compensation. If I'm ringing them up, I'm saying, you know, next season, 6 of our games are at half price of what we buy the stadium for those games. Something like that, because the amount of money that these pricks make when, you know, the games are at RAC Arena is unbelievable. The Wildcats would be paying a premium for finals as well, and that's where the ticket prices go up. And all of a sudden now, they're having to move everything to Challenger Stadium, which is all well and good, and it's going to be a little trip down memory lane, and it's going to be fun, and you're on top of everyone, and they'll pack it out, right? But it's still not the same as seeing 13.5 loyal, supportive, and loud members and fans at these particular games. So I'm disappointed. I know Mark is, you know, he's been pretty vocal on Twitter and social media and everything like that with his apologies to not only the fans, but the organisation as well. But it's not his fault. It's not the Wildcats' fault. It's RAC Arena's fault, and it's Kylie Minogue's bloody fault as well. So, yeah, I'm disappointed, mate, but we'll leave that there. That's another rant for another time.
No, you're right. So, yeah, all we can do is hope that, you know, the 4,500 people that are there, they just go crazy. They are cheering and yelling for the other 7.5 plus everyone else in the state who can't get this. So, yeah, so please... Unfortunately, time, as it always does, gets the better of us. So please, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Our podcast, Spotify, of course, YouTube too, and check in with the Basketball Fix for all your basketball needs. But yeah, cheer hard on Tuesday. Get home early. Make sure the kids are in bed. Get your favorite food and beverage ready to go in, no doubt, what will be a cracker of a match. And whether it's lose or win, we know that we know what the next sort of step is going to be. And Josh and I will be there to break it all down next week as well. But from Josh and I and the whole team of the Basketball Fix and the Wildcat Wrap, we're out for now.
Did enough to wrench it away. Cotton the dog for Hensel. You're kidding me. Whose depth and resolve has been tested. Cotton drops. Not sure what to do, so kicks it back up to the top. Shot clock at 5 for Cotton. That's ridiculous. Bryce Cotton is very